Today's lesson is about adding and subtracting linear expressions. Linear expressions basically mean you're only going to have a single variable x with no exponent on it, or a variable a, or any variable, but the main thing is there's no exponents on the variable. So when you add and subtract like expressions, or linear expressions is what they're called, all we do is we pair up or group up the two terms that are the same, the 3x and the 5x. Remember, think of it as I have 3 x's and I have 5 more x's for a total of 8 x's. Then we have two terms that don't have any variable or doesn't have the x, and we have 2 plus 7 more, we have 9. Again, so I group the two terms that had the x together, and I group the two terms that do not. Now, they might put those expressions in parentheses, but don't let the parentheses confuse you. What's nice is if it's plus symbol, I can just remove the parentheses. I can just leave the 4a plus 2, and then I can go plus, and then just write the 7a plus 9. So I don't really need the parentheses if this is a plus in between them. So again, I group the 4a and the 7a, or 4a plus 7a would be 11a, and the 2 plus the 9 would be 11 as well. And we get 11a plus 11. But they will start throwing in minus signs, so we got to be careful when minus signs are being thrown in. Again, if there's no parentheses, it's still not too difficult. 6b minus 3b, keeping the minus with the term that it's in front of. So 6b minus 3b would be 3b. And then the positive 7 minus the 4, well, 7 minus 4 is 3. And we get 3b plus 3. Now, if there's parentheses, you need to be very, very careful in removing the parentheses. You can't just drop them. Listen again, you cannot just ignore the parentheses if there's a minus sign, because you're minusing both of these terms. So what I would do is I would remove the parentheses on the first one, 7y plus 8, and then as I remove the parentheses on the second one, it's almost like the distributive property. I need to realize I'm subtracting both of these terms. I'm subtracting the 3y, so let's put that, subtract the 3y. And then I'm subtracting a negative 5. I'm subtracting a negative 5. But what happens when you subtract a negative? You end up adding 5, right? Now we group the two y terms together. 7y minus 3 is 4y. We group the 8 and the plus 5 now. It becomes 13. 4y plus 13. Just realize that minus sign changed the sign on that second term. They might also have you use the distributive property before you add the linear terms. So in other words, don't accidentally add 2a to a negative 5, or sorry, x, I mean. Don't add 2x to a negative 5x and think it's negative 3x, because we need to multiply. We need to distribute in first. So I'd recommend you do that. 6 times 2x is 12x. 6 times 7 is 42. And then we have the minus 5x. Now I can add the 12x to the negative 5x, or 12x minus 5x. It's going to be 7x. And then the 42 is a lone term by itself, and we get 7x plus 42. I want to do one more really quickly, because I want to see the hardest that you might see might have a couple distributing to do in it. So you might have something like 4 parentheses. 5x, that's not a 5, that's a 4. So let's do 4 parentheses, 4x minus 3 minus 7 parentheses minus x plus 5. Okay, so again, we have a couple times we have to distribute before we add like terms, or before we add or subtract. Now we got to be careful with our signs. First thing we're going to do is remove the parentheses by distributing in that outside number. 4 times 4x will be 16x. 4 times a negative 3, or minus 3, is going to be a minus 12. Now be very careful here with your minus signs. I have a negative 7 times a negative x, or 1x. Negative 7 times negative 1. Negative times a negative is positive. 7 times 1 is 7, or 7x. Negative 7 times a positive 5 now. Well, a negative times a positive is going to be minus, and 7 times 5 is 35. Now I can add the like terms. I add the 16x to the 7x. Both are positive, so when I add them, I'll get a larger positive number, being 23x. And then I add the negative 12 to the negative 35, or minus 12 minus 35 more. It's going to be a larger negative number. It's going to be 47. So make sure you know your distributive property from a previous lesson. Make sure you can watch your signs and know that a negative times a negative is positive, a negative times a positive is negative, and then just add like terms.